close your eyes for a second and imagine what it would be like if Agent 47 from the Hitman series decided that today he wanted to challenge himself and only use a kayak to complete his next mission. This is Phantom Covert Ops. This game is probably one of, if not the most unique stealth experience I have had in VR, and probably anything really within the stealth genre. This game is something that I think anyone who loves stealth, as well as kayaking, I guess, would probably enjoy and really needs to play. Originally released in 2020, Phantom Covert Ops has been one of the more unique experiences I have had in virtual reality. From the novel movement to the out-of-the-box stealth mechanics, Covert Ops is a game I would consider to be a required play for those that love the genre of stealth, regardless of what type of stealth it is. I'm someone who grew up trying to stealth every game I'd play, regardless of it being stealth or not. I'm looking at you, Skyrim stealth archers. I can say that Covert Ops is a game that puts stealth first and combat as a backup strategy. There's a lot of great things here that make Phantom Covert Ops one of the most unique VR experiences available, so go ahead, grab that food, grab your drinks, and prepare for another long review to make the conversation your mom had at the grocery store with her friend from college that she hasn't seen in 20 years and just found out that she moved back into town next to her friend Samantha, who, believe it or not, is having a baby and the shower's next week. She's definitely going to need to let Samantha know. Phantom Covert Ops opens with a military briefing akin to what you would see in an old Call of Duty or Metal Gear Solid game. The commanding officer on the previous mission is now leading this one and has informed you that they bombed this area and it believed it to be leveled with no survivors. Somehow they've gathered new intel that the operations have restarted at this facility, and it's your job to find out who's behind the operation, stop any further plans, and gather any intel you can on what they are actually creating at this facility, and if it's something that has been here before. Seeing as how you're a single soldier behind enemy lines, realistically, you would want to keep your presence completely unknown to the enemy. Obviously, you're not supposed to be there, and anything besides gathering information is going to leave a trace behind. You would be correct if you assumed that eliminating anyone in the open or otherwise eliminating anyone at all that's not a person of interest is going to tank your overall performance. That being said, there is a rank system in the game, but we will get to that a little bit later. You progress each level with a few side objectives, and this goes back to your person of interest. There are targets, there are hidden recordings, and there's hidden crocs within each individual level. These special targets, or targets or persons of interests, are essentially people that you're going to have to eliminate other than just doing your main objective. These are marked by your spotting equipment with a star above their head, and most of the main objectives are not really dealing with eliminating targets anyway, and instead are major points in the story. I would also like to mention that the targets of interest actually are given a little bit of a backstory, so instead of just going through focusing on that main mission, you're also getting lore and given another reason besides, hey, you didn't have anything to shoot while you were in this mission, so here is something to shoot at.
That's a high-value target, a mark on NATO's most wanted list. They're not your primary objective, but neutralize them if you can.
Each story mission has its own preset loadout that you'll be given. This is a story beat as well as an introduction to each piece of equipment that you'll be able to use within Phantom Covert Ops. However, there is one piece that you don't unlock until you do the challenge mode, which we will talk about a little bit later. But these unlocks are for the free play mode. This is where you go back, play through the campaign, try and improve your score, get any secrets that you missed, and kind of just have a really good time. This campaign takes about 4.5 to 5 hours, maybe a little less depending upon the difficulty, but overall I'd say that the campaign is fantastic for what it is, and I'll talk a little bit later about the gripes that I have with the campaign, but for now I want to talk about the cheats. Yes, You heard me right, cheats. These are offered in the free play mode, and keep in mind these will negate any score that you can get, so don't expect to be able to use these to have an easier time getting an S rank on any of these. But these are fun. A lot of these are really interesting, and most of them are unlocked during the campaign. You do unlock some of these while doing the challenge mode, but a lot of these are really interesting when it comes to the abilities that they offer you. One is pretty much unlimited ammo, never really need to reload. There's one that has tiny heads. There's super soldiers, and just overall makes playing back through the campaign just that much more interesting, even if you aren't given a score at the end. It definitely incentivizes you to go back and see how hard can you really make this on yourself. Additionally, at the end of each campaign mission on your first playthrough, you will be unlocking 1 to 2 challenges for the challenge mode, and as long as you get the A rank in the corresponding mission, these challenge levels will be unlocked. There is an additional 14 DLC challenges that come with the purchase of your game. I'm not sure if these were something that were additional DLC that used to cost something that now come for free. However, I want to say all the research that I've done within VR, it would kind of go without saying that more or less they probably gave it out for free to anybody who purchased the game, just because we are in that weird state as a medium to incentivize people to come back, just because the niche is kind of still small. That being said, they also introduced a new mode, which was Target Hunt. The initial modes that released with Phantom Covert Ops were Time Trials, Assassination, Shooting Range, and Elimination. But Target Hunt was introduced with the DLC. They also added more of a reason for anyone who has not tried cheats or just didn't give them the time of day, because they took away the ability to actually get ranked within the free play. They made it so that these cheats were auto-enabled on some of the additional DLC challenges, which I think is a nice touch, seeing as how I myself probably won't use too many of the cheats because they don't count towards my leaderboard score. I mentioned that there were 5 different modes, so I kind of want to go over what those are. Some of them are obviously going to be self-explanatory, but for the sake of the review, I definitely want to talk about them a little bit. Firstly, Time Trials. This is one of those ones that you know exactly what it is. These use parts of the campaign that you've already kind of gone through to see how fast you can get through those areas. There's no enemies at all, but there are mines in the water, and that kind of makes this more challenging, if you will. Having to know how the kayak works to make or break your initial time, whether that's due to slow movement or just not being careful enough around mines, I found myself dying quite often. But I also felt within this mode that your paddles were a lot more accurate when it came to maneuverability. I don't know what that is, but I felt myself dying to hitting mines more often than I did within the actual campaign. I want to say that's probably because I'm just trying to speed through the whole thing, but I also felt like if I was trying to maneuver away from a wall in the campaign, I had to look at it and then push off. Whereas within Time Trials, I felt like, no, I missed that mine, but it registered and then I blew up. Assassination is the next game mode. This will have you finding specifically marked targets across that map. Again, marked by a star above their head, just like the campaign. But it's going to be a lot more difficult, seeing as how you do not want to be caught at all in this, because the challenges are actually a lot more punishing than the campaign is when it comes to scoring and difficulty. So distractions are going to be your best friend in this, as well as speed. The next mode is Shooting Range. This is going to put you in a boat in your static position, hitting targets that are either moving across the screen or popping up. These are green and yellow. I believe there's also red targets, but these all have different set scores, and these scores are going to be based on how close you are to the center of that target. These challenges are really score based and accuracy based. So with that being said, if you're someone like me who kind of doesn't feel that the two-handed weapons are really just feeling right, I don't know if it's a iron sight thing or what, they just don't feel good to me, these are going to be a little bit more challenging overall for you. For those of you that wished you could go through the campaign just eliminating everyone without any sense whatsoever and didn't really care what happened, elimination is going to allow you to do that. This challenge mode pretty much puts you at a random spot in the map and allows you to eliminate every single person you can as quickly as possible. Speed is obviously going to be one of the things that plays into your rank, but also your ability to still stay stealthy is going to play into that rank. So make sure while you're going through this, although you are sent there to eliminate everyone, you are going to need to be stealthy. Finally, Target Hunt, which was the DLC exclusive mode, is a mix between shooting range and elimination. This mode's going to focus both on your speed and accuracy for its final rank, and I think that this is more of an interesting concept. I think maybe I would have liked this a little bit more if they were actual targets rather than cardboard cutouts, but the first one of these missions for Target Hunt gives you 5 minutes, and whether you finish the actual entirety of the map by eliminating all the enemies or not, you're still going to be provided a score. There's also this really cool scoreboard, and it's more to track who you've taken out so far, and these are dotted around the map of this first mission. I think that this game mode, again, is really fun, but I feel like it would have been more interesting if they gave you a reason to kind of fear a little bit more. But nonetheless, I think that it is a great addition to the game and is probably one of the more interesting modes. Also, within this mode, the higher value targets do make sound just because they're usually hidden or a little harder to find. Keep that in mind while you're going through this. You're going to want to hear and listen for this specific sound when you are looking for these higher level targets, because there are a lot fewer, but they're obviously going to be worth a lot more than just the regular targets. Throughout the video, I've been talking about this rank system and how you're given a grade, but I haven't necessarily explained what is behind this system. So, depending upon your difficulty, you're going to receive a different multiplier. This ranges from half to 1 to 1.5, and depending upon each individual aspect is how you're going to be given your score. These aspects are overall time, your accuracy, times you were caught, special targets you've eliminated, the guards you've distracted, and your number of deaths. These ranks go from D all the way up to S rank, and I would say overall it's not that hard to actually get an A rank, and I've even gotten S on the least difficult mode, which only gives you half points. So keep that in mind. But also, keep in mind that I am someone who plays a lot, and I mean a lot, of VR shooters. You can look at my reviews. A lot of those are VR shooters. So for me, when it comes to shooting in VR and even in real life, it's something that I do. So assume that I am going to be maybe a little bit more skilled than someone who is not actually doing a lot of first-person shooters. If this is something that you're looking at as someone who is going to kind of get an introductory, or you think that the movement style is really, really unique and really interesting, I would say go ahead, do it, but don't expect to have an easy time like I did when it comes to the accuracy. Before I continue, I want to take a second to thank our sponsors, and those are the people who are watching this video. All of you who like long-form reviews on YouTube are probably a niche within a niche, and this being a VR video is even more niche. So that being said, I want to thank you for being here, and I hope to see you in the future. If you've enjoyed this far, definitely make sure to hit the like button. But other than that, I don't have anything to ask from you. All I wanted to say was thank you so much for taking a chance on this video. Let's talk about weapons and equipment. Your loadout's going to play a pretty big role when it comes to the free play mode, and it's more going to be based on your preferences personally than anything else. There are some things that play a role in what I prefer to use in my loadouts, and one of those major things is the sight, because for me, if the iron sights just don't look good, or the red dot or scope just don't feel good enough, it's going to be something that I immediately just push off and never use again. Starting with the pistols, the Patterson, which more or less is like an M9, pistol, as well as the Shearshin 82. I'm not really sure what the, I guess, standard issue is in Russia, but I assume that that's what this is based off of. Both of these have great irons and are probably the best in the game, in my opinion, just because I'm a pistol lover. I love pistols. Those are going to be the guns that I usually will go towards in any game. So for me, both of these, great design. I used these 9 out of 10 times because I didn't really need to have long distance, long range shots until probably the challenge mode. If I had to guess, probably not until the challenge modes. There is no two-hand grab mechanic. Just put both of your hands close together and it will grab, but it's not necessarily a grab mechanic, if you will. I want to talk about snipers next, and this is a very, very different story compared to the pistols, because for me, snipers are something that I would like to use and want to use in most of the VR games that I play that offer them. But in Phantom Covert Ops, sniper rifles are like the last weapon I want to use, even when it comes to like the ARs. So there are two. One is the Patterson B89, which I believe is based off like the M700, but it also looks like it may have an SV98 body. It's also one of those where I feel like it should have a bolt that I can rack, but unfortunately I can't. It's just not a mechanic in the game, just like reloading isn't necessarily a mechanic in the game. It's kind of auto done for you. The second rifle is the Procolot rifle, which is more akin to an AS Val or a VSS. I always get the two confused. I'm not necessarily sure what the exact differences are. All I remember is both of them have integrated suppressors, and both of them are amazing whenever I use them in games. So the biggest issue that I have here is the way that the scope mechanic works. For this, the scope mechanic pretty much takes up the entirety of the screen, and I think that this was done for motion sickness reasons. Even if you turn off all the motion sickness stuff or accessibility, it doesn't turn this off, and there's not actually a scope here. So the big issue, although I love snipers, I can't and am not using a scope. You do have the option to set it to one eye or both eyes for aiming. For me, that's irrelevant when I'm not actually looking down the scope. I'm really just raising the weapon overall and kind of pointing the front of the weapon where I want it to aim, which obviously that side of the mechanic is going to make sense, but I want to aim down that scope. If you're going to put a scope in a game, please make it so that the scope works like an actual scope, or give the option. If you want to use this for accessibility reasons, 100%, I'm okay with that. I'd love more people getting into VR, and if this was an accessibility thing, 100%. If any of the devs are watching this, let me know in the comments below if that's what the decision was, where you just decided it was better from an accessibility motion sickness standpoint to have this be that way rather than actually aiming down a scope. The assault rifles or submachine gun, depending upon which one you get, are going to be the next weapons that I talk about. These are both two-handed weapons. The first being the LMP66, which I believe is based on the MP5, as well as the SV54, which I believe is based on the AK-47, not the 74. 74 is a smaller caliber, whereas you get the gist. The biggest issue that I have here is I just don't like how they handle. And this 110% may be a skill issue on my part, but it feels as though the weapons only have one axis and aren't able to actually be freely moved from back to front. So whenever you move the front, essentially the back is going to be super, super static. And I feel like in games like this, you want to have that two-axis point where, you know, if you really, really want, you can move the butt up and down as well as the front of the barrel up and down. Again, it could just be a skill issue on my part. I don't have any issue admitting that whatsoever. And if you think it's a skill issue, tell me down in the comments below that obviously I am bad at the game and really need to work on my aim with these weapons. The most unique weapon in game is the compound bow, and I think it's probably one of the coolest, if I'm being honest. I like snipers, love bows in games, whether that's Skyrim VR or anything that offers a bow at any given point in time is probably going to be my favorite part of the game. This bow is not in any part of the campaign and is actually unlocked by completing all 14 challenges that are given to you within the base game. So after you complete these challenges, regardless of rank, if I remember correctly, you are given this bow, which is awesome. You can go back using it in free play. It's definitely a little weird. You do have one challenge within the very base challenges of the game that offer the bow as a use for target practice. So it's definitely a little weird, can feel a little different, but it definitely made me feel like I was one of those 80s movie characters that for some reason people started coming after, and that was just the day that I was out in the woods hunting. That's kind of what it felt like. All I had was my bow with me, and I just had to do what I could with that. The final weapon you receive within the campaign is a D89 grenade launcher. I don't know if this is based on any real life weapon whatsoever. I couldn't find anything. However, my research skills on grenade launchers probably aren't the best. That being said, I don't really care for this weapon. It's weird. You only use it once in the main mission, really at the end. And the only noticeable thing about this weapon is the lack of an actual sight within what I would assume to be a red dot or like ranging sight for the weapon. So not sure where this came from. Not sure if this was intentional or if it was something that not enough people complained about, so it was never fixed. Or maybe this is how it was meant to be built, and I am just overanalyzing as I do sometimes. But regardless, I think the D89 grenade launcher is really fun in the challenge modes. But other than that, I don't really see a reason to use the D89 grenade launcher unless you're just going around to have an insanely fun time with cheats on, which is obviously a valid reason. Finally, there are only a few pieces of equipment that you can use within Phantom Covert Ops, one being the remote C4 explosives, the timed explosives, and the noise-making device. Both the remote and timed explosives will stick to surfaces and are pretty self-explanatory. The timed explosive is a 10-second timer and will do damage to the player if you're near it, so definitely get away from it. And obviously your remote explosive will have a remote detonator, so you can throw it on whatever you need to throw it on and get away from it, especially boats that are going by. Super easy, super reliable. The noisemaker, on the other hand, actually is more unique than I initially thought. So this will actually float on the water, believe it or not, and they will also stick to walls. Didn't expect that to happen, but it's a very cool mechanic. So if you're trying to get a guard all the way over and you've already used any distractions that are in the area and you're just trying to get them away from you because maybe you messed up or you were too slow on something, you can throw one of these really far and they'll go and see kind of what it is. Really helpful. I didn't find myself using them that much, but that's probably why I discovered a little bit later that they will stick to surfaces. So I did not initially know this, but I tested it out when I was kind of doing this edit, and it looks like magazines will also cause a noise distraction for enemies, which was very unexpected. Never said that that was something that they could do. This was just a complete and utter guess based on me not having anything, and it worked. I was pleasantly surprised, and I felt the need to add this in at the end of pretty much finishing this entire edit because, wow, just a great design by Endreams here, and I cannot wait for them to make a stealth-focused game again. I want to move on to talk about the design of Phantom Covert Ops, because the design of this game, there's a lot that is just so good and just so amazing that I feel the need to just talk about every tiny minute detail, which obviously I always do that. But there are just a few things that didn't really make sense to me overall. There's nothing that's killing the experience or even stands out really like a sore thumb. Just things that I really couldn't wrap my head around design-wise. So we'll get to that at kind of more of like towards the end of this section. This first one has me really excited because it just blew my mind, I guess. I don't know, it was just great. And that's the movement. To me, Phantom Covert Ops having that kayak movement is probably the coolest mechanic that I've ever seen in a stealth game, and moreover, one that's a VR stealth game. Stealth is something that I think is super challenging on its own, but pairing that with the fact that many players have probably never driven a kayak or paddled a kayak, whatever you want to say, so to speak, I think that adds an additional layer of intensity and just more tense situations to be had because of the required precision on something that you yourself have probably never experienced before, especially if you don't live near like a river or a lake, or I mean, even ocean. I've seen people use kayaks in the ocean. So this right here added a sense of difficulty for me because again, I'm pretty darn good with the firearms. I don't have an issue with aiming and hitting precision headshots. The movement, on the other hand, was something that I struggled with in the beginning, but as I continued to play, it just offered more and more. And as I progressed through the story, I learned about, I guess, back paddling with your left instead of, paddling forward to look right. If you back paddle on your left side, it's going to turn you left. And I use these on like sharper corners because I don't feel like the tutorial in the beginning really showed you this, but I knew there had to be something to be able to get that #1 score on the first challenge mode mission. Guys, the person that did this is insane. Props to this person, and I hope anybody that buys this game has a fantastic time going up against others on this leaderboard. A fantastic addition to the game, by the way, and a great piece of design to make it so that even a single player stealth-driven game can have some sort of competitive multiplayer element added to it. And just hats off all around to both that specifically, as well as the unique thought of putting a kayak within the only movement method you could engage in a stealth game. Fantastic job from nDreams here, and no notes in this department. Moving on to talk about the AI design, initially there was a lot that just kind of confused me, but as I continued to play, I realized that there was actually a lot going on in the background that I didn't understand initially. And the way that the AI was built, mechanics that are there work reliably every single time. Distractions and sounds are really consistent, and the descriptions that they have across the difficulty modes when it comes to the sound are relatively accurate. The one that throws me off a little bit about the AI is how it spots you, specifically when it comes to the distance that you are detected at. Sometimes I felt like the AI would see me from 30 yards away when they're not even necessarily looking for me. And when I say this, I'm talking about the detection state that you're in. But one part of the system that I could rely on was the accuracy of the detection system in the game that tracks the AI and your visible or hidden detection. That detection mechanic, which is pretty much a radar on your boat or on your kayak, is super accurate. And this is going to light up and beep as soon as you're detected in the slightest. The two separate states that you have here are the yellow, which means they are searching for you. And this, again, kind of going back just a little bit, is where I was confused, because even when I wasn't yellow, if they were just looking in my direction and I was 30 meters out, or 30 yards, whatever you want to say, it felt like I would still be spotted even when I wasn't in a searching or yellow state. And then as soon as they go to red state, that means that they're hostile. You're 100% detected, and you are going to have to either get out of there real quick, or you're gonna have to take out whoever spots you. And that kind of slows down time when you're being detected. So you do have that time to kind of pull out your pistol or AR or sniper and look back and try and take them out before they alert the camp and everybody else, which is really cool. But again, you're playing a stealth game and you're behind enemy lines alone. You do not want people to know that you are there. As soon as you get that yellow triangle above their head, you'll be able to look at your radar and know, okay, I am being searched for. They're kind of like in this relative location. So that radar is just a 360 proximity sensor for the most part. And that cone that is on your radar actually slowly shrinks as their detection levels become smaller and smaller. So they're not searching as much anymore. They're, that search stage or state of the AI will shrink and will fall down. That being said, red, which is hostile, is the same way. It's going to be really big, then it'll go to yellow, and then eventually it will completely disappear. Overall, it's really accurate, and it makes a lot more sense than when I initially started the game, and I have to commend Endreams here. They did a great job with that AI, minus the fact that I don't really understand what view distance, even in like a dark area, that I can be seen at, where sometimes it feels like I'm in the light and I should be super visible to something, and then other times I feel like I'm in a dark area and I'm visible to an AI that I didn't feel like should have seen me. Moving on to like the sound side of the AI, there are 3 difficulty levels. There are a, skilled, veteran, and recruit. So skilled is like normal, veteran's the hardest, and recruit is obviously going to be the lowest. Recruit, there is no paddle sound detection. So whenever you're rowing, you can row as fast as you want, doesn't really matter. They're not going to hear you row. Imagine, you're just going and there's just nobody has their hearing aids on in the nursing home. That's essentially what recruit is when it comes to sound. So that's what the description pretty much says for the most part. So it's also very hard for you to be spotted in this. So the description is accurate. For the skilled side of things, 3 to 4 hard slaps on the water is when you're going to get that searching state. So when you're going through this mode and you are near somebody that you have failed to slow down, you can't really back paddle too quickly or you're going to become detected. And again, the description matches what the challenge of this, difficulty is. On veteran, you get 1, maybe 2 hard slaps and you're done. You're immediately put into search mode, and it's going to be even harder for you to be able to get those big momentum pushes when you're going through the campaign or the free play mode, because you need to paddle, pretty quickly to be able to get up to speed when it comes to speeding across like an open section of a map. This definitely adds a lot more difficulty, and if you're someone that likes difficult, you're going to have a fantastic time here. Voice lines are pretty important when it comes to overall believability in a game, and dialogue was pretty good overall, and I'm not really going to say that it was something that was award-winning. However, there were 2 very specific NPCs, and you'll know them when you see them. Obviously, I'm going to show you them, but even if you didn't watch this review and you went through, you were like, oh, these people are definitely going to be like main side characters. And these 2, you felt like they were just 2 regular people having conversations throughout the entirety of the campaign. And you encounter them throughout every single level. It's always the 2 same male and female NPC. I've never eliminated them because 1, obviously I'm behind enemy lines. I don't want to be spotted. It also tanks my score. But also, I always wanted to hear their conversation. Now, this will kind of probably force you to go back through for a better time, but I really did enjoy this nice little touch. There was also an Easter egg for the Vitas or Vitis. It's a Russian song, and hopefully, if I put this thumbnail here, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'll probably link it below in the description. I just found it really, really funny that they have these simple touches that really bring the world alive and make it believable that you are essentially working as a undercover agent to go into what would be pretty much a splinter from, the country of Russia, and they're singing, they have these songs that are just like really popular, and they're just humming them within the game. I just think it's just really, really interesting. Lastly, I want to touch on the level design of Phantom Covert Ops. This all takes place on one map. Each level takes place within a cut-off section of this one map, and personally, I would have liked to have probably more diverse locations. I don't know if it was the lack of visuals or just kind of like the same feeling throughout the entirety of the game. I know that there were some swamp parts a little bit in the early side and the end of it, and then kind of near the middle they do have some like fallen buildings and structural destruction that happened. But like for me, I don't know if I would have preferred, hey, you're going to this one place to do a mission and you're going to this other place to do a mission and they're not related in any way. Or, I mean, even if they were just like, hey, you're different operatives, kind of like newer Call of Duties do, where you're, in one part of the world and then another part of the world and so on. But besides that, I think for what they were trying to accomplish here, I think this is probably the best way they could have done it, because it is only focusing on one person who is in fact at this facility, and you kind of have to track them down. For me, I think overall it's good, and it's good design, but I personally wish, from a standpoint of just myself and my opinion, that there were more diverse locations rather than just having this one facility within the game. And I hope that when and if they make a second game, that's something that is considered. If you've watched any of my previous reviews, you know that accessibility in VR is something that I find to be pretty important, especially since a lot of people can run into motion sickness issues. Phantom Covert Ops does not offer much in this department. However, based on how the game is played and how the mechanics work, especially when it comes to the sniper scope, I don't believe you need to have too much. There are blockers that can assist with motion sickness, but beyond that, there's not really anything that they could have added beyond the actual just vignette or blockers that I can really say is needed overall. Our very last section before our conclusion is a staple of every VR review that I do, and it's just for fun. It's one of those things that just kind of adds to the world of the review, and that's, is it VR? Is this a place that if you were to be put into this game and could only interact with the items available to you that your player character can grab, would that character be able to survive off of those things? And obviously, this does not pass. You can't, there's no food to grab, there's no water to grab. You can't do any of that, and this obviously doesn't hold any weight on the score or anything. It's just a fun thing, but you would in fact die in this world if you were to be teleported into it and could only interact with what you have available. Before I finally wrap this up, I hope you found this longer form review to be something you enjoy, and if you made it this far, definitely make sure to leave a comment below saying your aim sucks. If you want to go a step farther, subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. But to wrap up this review, I think Phantom Covert Ops is an amazing game, and nDreams did a fantastic job with what they set out to do. The stealth, the gameplay, the atmosphere, and just overall design really do come together in a way that only a few VR studios can achieve. Seeing as how they kind of set up the chance of a second game at the end, I'm hoping that they offer more diverse locations for the levels and hopefully a longer runtime, as this was only about 4.5 to 5 hours for just the regular campaign. But for a 2020 VR release, this is something that I would consider to be more than acceptable in all aspects, and I know that there are devs still working at nDreams that love this series. So if any of you are seeing this, yes, I'm waiting for Phantom Covert Ops 2. And I hope that this series gets some serious love and continues to see actual games come out for it in the near future as well as the foreseeable future. That being said, I recommend this game. Buy it. It's fantastic. My name is Butters. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I want to thank you for letting my reality become part of your virtual reality.